Welcome to the Global Impact Ministry's Trip Financial Overview. Common sense should prevail during your travels. If you wouldn't pay for it out of your own pocket, please don't expect the church to. It is expected that as a team leader, you will return whatever money is not spent. Please be good stewards of the money donated by our congregation. You will be sent with funds to cover your trip budget, as well as additional funds to use in the case of an emergency. The budget is based on number of travelers, type of trip costs, and all of these expenses will need to be pre-approved. Please familiarize yourself with these important instructions regarding the trip budget and team leader funds. Money is confusing on so many levels. Throw in fatigue, culture shock, different currency, etc., and you've got yourself in a whole big mess when you're trying to figure out where the money went and what happened. In this module, we'll do a quick review of timeline, team leader funds, the role of a financial coordinator, basic reconciliation, and how to manage receipts. 4 to 5 weeks prior to departure, you should have a budget planning meeting with your context leader or staff. And then 3 to 4 weeks before you head out, we ask that you submit your team leader funds request to your staff liaison. 2 to 3 weeks prior to departure, staff will request funds from accounting. And then 1 to 2 weeks before your trip, the team leader will receive your trip funds check. Pre-field expenses. All pre-field expenses should be paid by the team leader or trip participant purchasing the item and reimbursed through the church prior to trip departure. Team leader funds are for use in the field and not in Kansas City. To be reimbursed, all receipts must be turned into GIM staff no later than 30 days after the expense. Please include the address that you would like the check to be mailed to and the original receipt. Additional expenses outside of the budget must be pre-approved by a GIM staff member. Check cashing and depositing funds. Commerce Bank is who we use as a church. If you don't have an account there, there may be a fee. You can cash it at your own bank, but that means that sometimes it will take 7 days to clear. Work with your context leader to determine what denomination should be requested. Request newer bills printed after 2009. Many places will not accept bills with wrinkles, writing, rips, or tears. We recommend that you designate envelopes for specific funds to make the budgeting and accounting easier. You will always go to your meals envelope for the funds to be used out of that budget. Exchange only what you think you will need. Do not exchange emergency funds. Use as much foreign currency as possible. On-field expenses include travel fees, meals and tipping, worship, cultural day, or safari. Travel fees, entry and exit fees, baggage fees. The trip leader will only cover baggage fees if we ask you to pack a church bag with supplies. If a trip participant needs to check a bag, they will be responsible for paying for that bag with personal funds and carrying their own luggage. Allowance. While traveling, if the flight is canceled or substantially delayed, the following guidelines should be followed. Meals, $10 per person per meal or $30 per person per day total. Lodging, the lowest cost provider, 2 per room, same gender, unless number of participants/costs allows married couples to room together. Let's review the basic guidelines for tipping. Translators, drivers, etc. should never be tipped more than 1 day's wages or 10%. Luggage handlers, $1 to $2 per bag. Team members are strongly encouraged to handle their own luggage, but if a luggage handler happens to be needed and one is not available from the team, stick with these guidelines. Guest house, hotel housekeepers should be tipped the following at the end of the week. $5 per small room, 1 to 4 people, $10 per large room, 5 to 10 people. That is for the whole week. Meals, unless pre-approved by the Global Impact Ministry staff, here are the guidelines to follow. $10 per person per meal or $30 per person per day total for all meals. If participants choose to select menu items pricier than listed above, any additional meal cost is voluntary and should be paid by the trip participant. This excludes the celebration meal. Snacks and drinks purchased by team members and leaders are to be purchased on their own unless the snack is replacing a meal. All restaurant receipts must be itemized with food and beverages purchased. Receipts that only have the final total are not acceptable. We will discuss more about receipts in a little bit. Worship. We budget $30 for international contexts in Puerto Rico and $50 for contexts that are in the mainland US. This is the only time that we allow a personal donation from trip participants. It is not required, but should they choose to do so, we recommend a $3 to $5 maximum. Cultural days and safaris. All cultural days should be prepaid and planned into the trip cost unless pre-approved by staff and entered into the team leader fund's budget request. Cultural day fees may include safaris, museum visits, park visits, lunch, end-of-week celebration meals, and ice cream. If your team is going on a safari, please follow these guidelines for tipping. Tipping will occur at the end of the safari by the team leader. Tips are included in the cost of the safari for the participant. Participants are not to tip individually. $10 per driver per person per day. $5 per tracker per person per day. The financial coordinator is a team member role. This person should be identified and selected during a team meeting. Be sure that the person understands the importance of being conscientious and thorough. The trip leader will work with the financial coordinator. The trip leader should not be taking on this role. The financial coordinator, trip leader, and staff member will review the budget, receipts, reconciliation during a scheduled meeting post-trip. Let's take a few minutes to walk through these 3 steps. Reconciliation financial spreadsheet, how to verify and utilize church receipts, what to do with unused trip funds. Take a minute now and download this document from the GIM SharePoint folder for team leaders. It can be found in the folder titled Resources for Team Leaders. Your context leader and/or staff will review this with you before you go on your trip, but let's take a quick overview. It is highly recommended that you conduct a daily reconciliation. You will be so busy day to day that if you find you are missing a receipt, it can be almost impossible to remember where that may have been. Doing the daily reconciliation will also ensure that you stay on track throughout your time there. Each day, you should add your cash and any receipts from the day, which should equal the funds received in your check from the church prior to departure. Let's take a few minutes to review. Don't worry, your context leader and/or staff will review this with you before you go on your trip, but let's take a quick overview of the document you downloaded earlier. Column A. This is where you will find expense categories like transportation, meals, etc., and the dates on your receipts. Column B is place. If someone is being paid for their service and there is no business name, use the individual's name. An example, Sandy, Medici Guest House, Pettiquave. Column C is for items and expenses, a description of the expense, including the name of the attendees. When referencing a large group, use these designations. Lunch for the congregation and team, and then know that the receipt will need to have all of the items purchased listed. Column D, currency. Currency, if name is US dollar, use USD. Example, Kwacha, Lempira, Rand. Column E is for the amount. Enter the amount in whatever currency you are using. When using a different currency, select one exchange rate and use this same exchange rate for all of your transactions used in country currency. Column G, US dollar amount. If you've added either $1 for USD or country currency in column F, then this column will automatically populate. For example, Lempira is 23.55 to $1 US. And so when you've entered 50, it automatically divides and it now becomes 212. Column H is for the receipt number. Number each receipt and add the number of the receipt in this column. Spreadsheet tips. When no business receipts are available, use the provided church receipt. 2 signatures will always be required. If vendor is not available to sign, then have a second individual who is present. A team member is fine, sign the receipt as well. Categories are broken down by expense. If your expense does not fit into any of the columns, then place it in the miscellaneous section. All tips should be placed under the tips section. Please do not give any additional tips. Tips are approved by our partners and aligned with their tip policy. Please remember to adhere to the established budget. Using money outside of the budget requires prior approval. Leader funds are not to be used for personal expenses, including snacks for team members. Our budget is for trip-related expenses. Please do not include purchases of supplies that the team deems necessary, such as fixtures or tools or supplies that do not support the trip's purpose. Remember, the funds used outside of the budget means that fewer funds will be available for the purpose of supporting our partners' initiatives. Let's review receipts. This is a Church of the Resurrection receipt. It needs to include the date of the expense, a receipt number, and it's okay if it's not in order. Just make sure you add the same receipt number to the spreadsheet, the name of the company or the person, and then the recipient signature or the team leader and finance coordinator's signatures. 2 signatures will always be required. These are for pre-trip expenses. Does this look right to you? All pre-trip expenses should be sent in for reimbursement prior to trip and not used out of trip funds. No need to fill out a Church of the Resurrection receipt if there is an original one available. Take a minute to review this receipt and let's talk about what may be wrong. Who is Samuel? There is no last name. Where's our second signature? Where's the original Walmart receipt? We know Walmart prints receipts. Let's review this restaurant receipt. Take a look at this one, and maybe you can tell me what's wrong. First, all restaurant receipts should include itemized receipts. This person should have paid for the expense with team funds and not a personal credit card. Let's take a moment to review these expenses. Does it look right to you? No personal items should be purchased. You must stick to our budget and use trip funds, not personal credit cards. Thank you so much. Your context leader and GIM staff will work with you to establish a budget, but hopefully this gives you a good idea, and I hope this is a good resource for you.